equal, so we take our leverage ratio, and that would be 17674 divided by assets, and then times your R. So that's L times R. There you go. And so now let's do a test of this number. And let's do a Z. Well, Z equals R, or ROA, forgive me, minus the expected ROA. And then we'll divide this by the standard deviation of the ROA. And this is what we get. And then if we did the probability, we would say equals norm S dist. And we'll highlight this number. And you will notice no matter how many decimals you want to go, it's right on the button, isn't it? Okay, so what we did today, excuse me, is that we reversed the process that we had followed for Tuesday. Okay, so Tuesday, we knew the ROA, and we solved for the z-score and the probability. And today, on the other hand, we had a probability in mind, and we solved for the amount of debt. So instead of an analysis tool, this becomes a management tool. So if we're willing to live with a 0.5% probability of not covering, and if these are accurate estimates, you know, these numbers, then this is the most debt that this company can have. Okay. But then we're looking at other options here, 1%, 2%, and 5%. So let's finish those very quickly. And what should that take us? 3 seconds? 2 seconds? How many? Depends if you locked everything. I hope I did. We'll find out in a hurry. Yeah, there you go. All right, and with any other management or analytical tool that you see in finance, this one has its limitations. Okay? And let's kind of summarize what they might be. All right. Let's say 5% isn't, that's actually a very bad, way too high. Well, let's say you could live with that somehow. I couldn't, but let's say these people can. Well, do you see what their debt ratio is? 56%. All right, I don't know how many you've taken 339 or any of these other where you actually analyze companies, but if I said to you the debt ratio is 56%, what kind of company would you think I'm talking about? Well, there's kind of a scale, all right? Let's start at the low end. Lowest end will be entrepreneurs, startups. They're typically very low debt because nobody will lend to them, right? They're very high in equity. Okay, then you move up a bit. If you have a very volatile EBIT, then you probably have a low debt ratio. So now we're going to get into wholesalers and retailers. And maybe it climbs the scale a little bit to manufacturers. So amongst those groups, you don't find debt ratios over 30%. Most of them are in the 20s. So where are we here? This is a public utility. You see, public utility is landlocked. Its return is regulated, so it can afford to have a lot of debt because it's got a cash flow that's predictable. Okay, then you keep going up. Now what do you hit? Financials. And then once you get all the way to the 85-ish number, 90-ish number, banks. Okay, so this analysis might say I can have 56% debt. Well, in your own industry, you would be looked at as an outsider unless you're doing something financial or public utility here. You would be an outsider. It's just, this wouldn't be right. Then, if you want to use a fancy word, caveat number 2 would be you can work problems like this and actually end up with more debt than assets. Okay, you can actually work a problem and it'll say more debt than assets, suggest that you can have more debt than assets, which is not possible. So debt plus equity is an identity with assets, isn't it? You have negative equity if that's the way you are. Okay. So just got to be careful. You can't take the words, you can't take these numbers, without seeing them and seeing the practicality of what you're finding. All right, so let's go back to the PDF if we could for a moment. Okay, one other thing I'd like to point out. One of these tables. You can look at that one. I think it's the better table here. Oh, come on, there it is. Okay. Now let's not mix up what's on here with what we've been doing in class. They're the same thing. Except, you see this one here says the average number of standard deviations between the mean ROA and ROA necessary to meet fixed charges. That's what we've been doing. All right? But somebody, if I said, let's do a one we've kind of reasonable here. Let's do a B bond, 1.05. All right? I have had students in the past say 1.05, well, that's about a 70% probability. Why? Why would they say that? Well, I guessed at that. Let me see how far off I am. Oh, way off. 85. Okay. So I would agree with you wholeheartedly that these are positive numbers, but it says, average number of standard deviations between mean ROA and ROA necessary to meet fixed charges. Let's even do the first one here. 6.6. It doesn't say minus 6.6. It says 6.6. So if you took that literally and said, well, that's 6.6 to the right, that means, well, all but 100% of the time they can't meet their fixed charges. Well, that's not right. Okay, so if you want a better image of these numbers, think of them as all actually being negative. That makes sense? These are distance in the left tail. Otherwise, you don't expect to cover. How can these industries or these bond companies or these bond ratings not expect to cover? And you can see here the implied probability of shortfall. And you can see 6.6, these are all very small numbers. They're all less than 50%. So those Z's had to be in the left tail, didn't they? So one assumption I'd like you to make, if I give you a question on exam, it says there's 2.2 standard deviations between the company's expected ROA and ROA required to cover their fixed charges once. Okay, you can assume that's in the left tail. That's a distance, right? But if it's an ongoing company and the industry is successful, it has to be in the left tail. All right, so you can just kind of assume that these are all left tail. Well, you can see by the probability they're in the left tail, but yeah. So what is a standard? I mean, what is these Z-scores? They're just distances, right? 6.6 standard deviations, that's a distance. All right. All right, I think that's all we will be covering here. I don't see anything else. And you can see that some industries are a little safer than others. Air transportation is a little lean here, isn't it? But it's not our problem right now. All right. And we've done this. And you'll see that our numbers are better than these, but that's fine. All right, so let's go back then, and let's examine what your assignment will be for Thursday. Okay, your assignment is at the end of this document, and it is extremely similar to what we've done, just different numbers. Okay, like let's do the. Oh, okay, yeah. No, one other little thing. If for some reason you don't care to use Excel to do this, I think that some of the z-scores you'll get will not be on the chart that I've created here for you. So I can only go to what, 3.09, right? So if you get a z-score of 3.5, negative 3.5, what happens? It's not in this table. So I just made a note. If you want, if it's less than the smallest number on the chart, then answer the question less than 0.1%. That's fine with me. But I would prefer that you look it up on Excel. All right. So our first question is, given the numbers, expected ROA, standard deviation, same numbers we've seen all along, just different values, same types of numbers. What's the probability of a coverage ratio of less than 1? That's exactly what we've been doing. All right. What's the probability of a coverage ratio of less than 3? Well, you might recall that on this we did coverage ratio of 1, 2, 3, didn't we? And whatever you get for the ROA for covering once, the ROA for covering 3 times is 3 times that number, isn't it? So instead of just testing the ROA for covering once, you test the ROA for covering 3 times. That's all you have to do. Okay, so what is the maximum amount of debt the company can service and have a 3% probability that the coverage ratio will fall to 1 or less? Well, that's just what we did today. Okay, and we don't have a 3%, otherwise you just plug, couldn't you? But yeah, 3% chance, so somewhere between 2 and 5. So you get a z-score between these two, wouldn't you? All right, well, that won't be so hard, I hope. Okay, so question 4, what is the maximum amount of debt? Oh, look at that, a 10% probability that the coverage ratio will fall to 1 or less. All right, you get up to 10%, you're talking some serious debt. You'll be getting a very high debt ratio. All right, then, how sensitive? We're starting out with a 12% interest rate. How sensitive is this calculation to the interest rate? All right, so we're going to rework. So number 5, you just rework number 1, except use 14% instead of 12. That's all you got to do for the interest rate for R. Okay, then number 6, you basically rework question 3. Except instead of a 10% probability, you're going to use a 15% probability of covering, of not covering, and you're going to use a 14% interest rate. So it's the same calculations, just different numbers. We're trying to see how sensitive are we if we change some of these numbers. All right, and then what's the probability that the company's EBIT will be 0 or less? All right. Now, we have not done a test on EBIT, have we? We just did a test on ROA, right? Okay, so I'll just give you a little hint here, and this should just give it away totally. If you have an EBIT of 0, it corresponds to what ROA? There you go. Then test that ROA. And that is it. So I would say, I told you when we did chapter 19, and those Excel worksheets, I suggest you don't start this Monday midnight. Okay, this one, if you start Monday midnight, you're going to be okay. This should not take you very long, given what we've done. Okay, then on Tuesday, we'll go through this, and then I will provide a review for you for the exam that we'll have on Thursday. So the exam on Thursday will have this, obviously. It will have, so the 3 topics will be managing, we'll work backwards. Managing debt, that's this one. The limits of diversification, that's the previous unit. And then the cost of capital, which was chapter 19. So it'll be 3 topics. That'll do it. Yeah.
Is there a test online again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all tests will be online.
Why in your syllabus did it say that there's 2 in person? We were just wondering, like,
Okay.
if that was a thing, how that could possibly work.
All right. What that became, I have 4. So technically, you would take, if you came to class that day, you would be in class for perhaps 2 of them. I don't care if you're here. All I'm saying is you'll take it remotely regardless if you're in class or not. If you want to come here to make sure you get a good connection, I'm all for it. But we can't get everybody in here. So only those who are scheduled for that day can take it in here. But I will not be here. You're welcome to bring all your notes, anything you want to bring. I don't require you to lock down your browser, so you can use Excel all you want. That's all fine with me. Yeah, I should take that out. You got a good point. You see, I put a request in for a classroom large enough that we could get everybody in it, then we just test together, but I couldn't find one. There are some that are using the Davies Center for classrooms. And those have enough room, but ugh, do you want to go there? I'd rather do it this. Anyway, you know, to me, again, I'm just hoping for fall we'll get real semesters again. You know, someone will be sitting here with a paper exam and no multiple choice. So I couldn't find a way. I'm not sharp enough. I'm not clever enough. I don't know software enough that I could find a way to take an open-ended exam online.
Whole Excel is actually kind of more efficient.
Yeah, Excel is okay, but what happens is you have to submit that. So I guess I could have done it and said take it on Excel, but then somebody who's a wizard in Excel is way ahead of the next person. So I didn't know if that was fair. Another one, someone told me that what he did was he had them write it out, take a picture, and then submit the picture. And I don't want to look at that. You got to be kidding me. So once we get back, so we're in the classroom and there's real paper, I'll have my open-ended questions again, and the mean will go way down. I didn't realize that providing guesses makes the scores go up so much, but it sure does. So let me see if there's any, my thing didn't go purple, so I don't think I have any questions here. Whoops, come on, lady, over here. I didn't even open my chat, oh boy, that's bad. Recording started, okay, I'll just ask if there's any questions and we'll get the hell out of here. Oops. All right, so I'm guessing that assignment will not take you very long at all. And actually on the exam, people tend to do very well in that unit. Just think about it, you don't even have a text. It's not in your text. All right, well, I'm going. Goodbye.